the Italian Football Podcast.
So what we'll do is, first of all, we're going to split this into two. First of all, we'll look at the overarching state of Italian football, the bigger picture, let's say. Then after we do that, we'll go into the actual three matches themselves, and because each game has its own story, and we'll go through the three games and what went wrong for Juventus, Juventus, Milan, and Atalanta. But to start off with, we need to talk about the greater meaning of this horror week, and this is maybe the worst week in the history of the Champions League for Serie A, pound for pound, and I think that will become apparent as we go through this segment. For me, we knew, we've been warning about it, that this day was coming where we hit rock bottom. We've warned about it for years. The signs are all there, and we'll go through what those signs are again. We'll remind everyone what the signs are, and now we've hit the abyss. This is our lowest point. To go out in the first. I mean, it's not even the last 16. It's the last 24. We haven't. Three of our four teams haven't even reached the last 16. That's how bad it is, and we have to be honest of where we are now. Italian football is a mess from top to bottom. We've had a few good recent years where everybody's spoken up that Calcio is back and all these nonsense slogans. But the truth is that really we've only had one good year in the Champions League, which was in 2023, and all the other good performances have generally come in the two minor cup competitions, the Europa League and Conference League, which are minor cup competitions, if we're really being honest, as a whole, that is. We have become a feeder and outcast league. We the players that we sign are generally rejects from the Premier League or other big clubs, and they are developing players who we then sell on once they approach their peak. And you only have to look through our biggest teams and see that Milan's team is full of Premier League rejects. Players that have been considered disposable from the Premier League teams: Walker, Tomori, Loftus-Cheek, Pulisic, João Felix, Giroud before you. These are players that were disposable. Juventus in January, look at their transfer market. They signed a Newcastle reserve for 24 million euros, a Chelsea reserve, a PSG reserve. Juventus have Celtic and Leeds outcasts starting for them. And then we're supposed to be surprised if they flop in Europe. Inter have been performing miracles with free transfers for a number of years now, which is unsustainable. Atalanta have been performing miracles with a championship budget, and our league and our clubs have no money. We have banks and investment funds owning our clubs. Our TV rights are plummeting year after year. We have a marketing and social team that can't even speak English, let alone write English. We have commercial chiefs who are completely clueless, and they think that flying to America once a month to their New York office will suddenly take Serie A back to greatness. We have stadiums that are crumbling. We can't build new stadiums. We don't give Italians and youth players a chance. Our national team has not qualified for a World Cup in 12 years. We've not won a Champions League for 15 years. And now to top it off, we've got to the point where three of our biggest teams go out in the Champions League before the last 16 stage, not to big teams, but to teams from Belgium and Holland. Two of these three teams in complete crisis at the moment as well. We're now at the level where we're going out to PSV, Feyenoord, and Club Brugge. One of these three teams could maybe happen. Two could maybe happen. Three, I'm sorry, that's no coincidence. That's not circumstance. That's a sign of decay, and that's the sign that really hammers home. The last two nights have hammered home just how far Italian football has fallen.
Yes, I think from my perspective, I look at it like the bird's eye view of the things you outlined, and the structural mess that is Italian football, to borrow a phrase from, I think her name is Amanda Staveley, who was involved in the Newcastle takeover, and the reason why they didn't invest in Italian football. The other is, which we're going to talk about, are the games themselves. Why Brugge, Milan, Feyenoord, PSV knocked Italian football, knocked these clubs out, and because it's very different situations. The macro and the micro perspective is what we look at here whenever we do these post-mortems. And I just want to stress that more than one thing can be true at the same time. But you have to be as blind as a bat if you don't understand and refuse to understand that Italian football is in a crisis, that it's probably the worst crisis it has ever been in, because this is not just about the results not being there. Between 1970 and 1983, Italy never won the European Cup or Champions League. They were in 4 finals along the way.
1985.
Sorry?
1985.
No, I looked it up. I think 84. Yeah, 84.
Well, 85 is when Juventus won it, but yeah, they
yeah,
didn't
exactly.
win in those
So
years.
between 1970 and 1984, no Italian club won the Champions League European Cup. That's the longest period that Italian clubs went without winning it. If Inter failed to win it this season, that record will be equal, because between 2011 and 2025, no Italian club would have won it. Between 70 and 84, 4 Serie A clubs were in the final. 10 between 2011 and 2024, 3. So if Inter don't make it, it's even worse than that. Now, the difference, of course, is that football has changed from 1970 to 2011. And that's also another aspect of this, that the people running Italian football, in my honest opinion, don't understand that. They don't understand that. What we've seen the last couple of years with Italian football, and I said it at the time, you can go and check. I said that the top Italian Serie A clubs, the distance between them and the top European clubs, that distance has shrunk, and the top Italian clubs are actually able to impose themselves at the top European level because they've improved, and the top European clubs were in some sort of a decline, and that's why we've seen the good results over the past 4 or 5 years. My feeling has been, and my thoughts have been, that this season, I don't know how much better the top European clubs are, but I definitely can guarantee you that the top Serie A clubs have overall declined in quality. And I think that's what we're seeing play out.
Can I just come in there about
and let me just finish. And the point is that in order to address an issue, you have to first acknowledge that it exists. When I interviewed Andy Mitchell, the CEO of Serie A for North America, and he was a lovely guy, and I'm really, nothing against him, and it's not really his job to kind of come out and berate the Serie A for their misdealings the last 2 decades or 3 decades. But what I was looking for was some sort of awareness of the problem. I heard nothing. And I don't blame that on him. I blame that on his superiors. His job is not to do that. He's there to enact the vision of those who have hired him. There is no acknowledgement of these issues about with those above him. I'm sorry, there isn't. And as long as that's true, these last couple of years of Italian clubs winning Europa League, Conference League, getting to the final of each every competition, those have been good results. But given that the overarching problem has not been addressed, the last few years are like putting Snoopy Band-Aids on gunshot wounds.
Yeah, but I actually want to come back, because I think it's a myth that the last few years have been good for Italian teams in Europe. They've been good for Italian teams in the Europa League and the Conference League, but they haven't been good in the Champions League. The Champions League, we've had one excellent season in the Champions League over the last, probably dating back to probably 2017 or 2018, where as a whole we've had one season, the 23 season when Inter lost in the final to City. We had the Milan derby in the semi-finals, wasn't it? And we had Napoli played Milan in the quarterfinals. That was an outstanding Champions League season by our clubs. But go through the last kind of 6 or 7 years of Italian clubs in the Champions League, that is where you really measure the quality of the league. I'm sorry, you don't do it with the Europa League and the Conference League. You don't, as a whole. Those are minor cup competitions, which a lot of some of the bigger leagues don't even take seriously. Premier League teams don't take those competitions seriously. We've done well in those, but in the Champions League we haven't. Juventus haven't got past the last 16 since when was the last time? 2018. Milan, apart from that season in 2023, when was the last? Have they ever got past the last 16? No, they haven't. And Atalanta, apart from they had that one season, didn't they, where they were in the quarterfinals and they were in the quarterfinals where they were seconds away from reaching the semis. That one great season in the COVID season. They haven't got past the last 16 once in any other season. And Napoli got to the quarterfinal of the season when they lost to Milan in 2023. That was the first time ever that they've got past the last 16. So I'm sorry, it's a myth. We haven't been performing well in Europe. We've been performing well in the Europa League and the Conference League, which I'm sorry, they're minor cup competitions. That's not taking anything away from Atalanta's achievement last season, because they beat big clubs last season. So I'm not taking anything away. It was a brilliant achievement. They beat Liverpool, they beat Bayer Leverkusen. That was absolutely fantastic. But I'm talking, I'm talking about the bigger picture here. Over this whole idea that Italian clubs have been doing great in Europe over the last 4 or 5 years, and we're improving. And then look at the coefficient points. We've got all these coefficients. Those coefficient points have almost all come from the Europa League and Conference League, because the way that the format and the structure of how you earn coefficient points, if I'm being totally honest, is ridiculous. They've actually given the same value until this season anyway. They've given the same value for performance in those two minor cup competitions as they do in the elite competition. So Italy have been racking up the points by performing well in the Europa League and Conference League, because their teams have dropped down from the Champions League. So we've actually been rewarded for poor performance. Our team's dropping out or not being good enough for the Champions League. They've been dropping down. So I just wanted to address that first, because I think it's a myth. I do. I think it's a myth, and I think this day has been coming where we're humiliated in the Champions League to teams from lesser nations. We wouldn't be having this. It wouldn't be so bad if Juventus had lost to Real Madrid, and Milan had lost to PSG, and then you could accept it. You could say, okay, we lost to top teams. We're losing to teams from the Benelux countries. That is really damning. That is.
Yeah, it is. It is. But like I said, there's a macro perspective, as in an overarching perspective, and there's a micro, meaning the details of each and every one. We're going to talk about the overarching things first, and then we're going to go into the nitty-gritty of every single game, because I think there are very different eliminations. Juve's, Milan's, Atalanta's are all different eliminations for various reasons. But they are connected, even though there's no we're not saying that there's a direct correlation, but there is connections. There's, again, a long-term perspective, short-term perspective, over macro perspective, micro perspective, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Well, the financial situation. Did you want to break down the some of the main points I made in my monologue? The financial situation of the league. How can we expect to be challenging? It's just basic logic. If you've got no money at all, if your clubs, the players that our clubs can afford are, like I said, they're rejects and developing players. Can anybody be surprised? Like I said before, is anybody really shocked that Juventus are flopping in Europe when they're playing with a Newcastle reserve, a Chelsea reserve, a PSG reserve, Celtic and Leeds outcasts? That's 5 there I've just named. Okay, they might have some other excellent players in the squad, and that might be unfair on some of these players. But I'm sorry, you can't be surprised.
Look, I think that's fair. It's true, but I think there's more to it than that. I think.
No, but I'm just talking about the level of players that we are.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. That the top level players, the world class, the biggest names, they haven't gone to Italian football, and they don't for many, many years. And when they come to Italian football, they are at the age of Kyle Walker. They're past their best. They're at Cristiano Ronaldo level. which almost cost Juventus their existence financially because they couldn't even afford him at that level. Very, very bluntly put. When you want the superstars and megastars, you have to get them when they're declining, and you can barely afford them then either. That's what we're talking about here. It's not, just Colomwani and Lloyd, what's his name, Kelly, and no, it's not. You have to again. This is the overarching perspective we're taking. The top players, the biggest stars, the biggest talents, they don't go to the Italian clubs at any level. They go to the Premier League clubs. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean that Cristiano Giuntoli hasn't made mistakes, or Marotta hasn't made mistakes, or Moncada and Furlani haven't made mistakes at Milan. That's not what we're saying. The issue is, or that the Premier League clubs, just because they have money, they spend it wisely. Far from me to sit here and say that, but that's not what we're saying. We're just saying that in order to succeed, you have to create an environment to succeed. That includes financial structure, revenue streams. That doesn't exist. Yeah. And when that doesn't exist, you have to be creative, and you have to perform what Italian sporting directors are the masters at, and that is, performing miracles with second-rate players. And with all due respect to Mkhitaryan, Pulisic, Muani, all of them different ages, of course, but they are second-rate players. They're not cream of the crop.
It's not a winning hand. You haven't got a winning hand, and if you do, perform well for a while, like Inter have done, it's not sustainable. And I'm telling Inter fans, and you'll be the first to admit, what Inter are doing is not sustainable. It's gonna crash for Inter at some point. They're being incredibly run by a genius in Beppe Marotta. Sorry, it's gonna fall. They're gonna fall away. It's because it's not sustainable as in terms of as a whole. It's not sustainable to do what they're doing. It's the same for Atalanta. Atalanta will be performing miracles, but they've got a championship budget. So we can't expect them really much better than what they're doing. And as I've said anyway, they've only once got past the last 16. So even though they're performing miracles, if we're talking at a Champions League level, the elite competition, they've still only got past the last 16 once, despite performing miracles. So this is what we're talking about. But I think with revenue streams, we're in a situation now where we need to bring in more money, and there's obvious ways of doing that. But you've got to create a product in which will generate revenue and generate sponsors, and they're just the people that run the league are just so clueless. I mean, the TV rights every year they plummet. They're plummeting year after year after year. I think by the next right cycle we're gonna struggle to sell them in many more markets. Every single right cycle we struggle more and more. We have the head of the TV rights in Italy, and also an agency that take care of it. Who we did a pod on this, didn't we? Several months ago at the beginning of the season. They're so clueless and incompetent. They wait until a few days before the Serie A season starts before they even start going to possible to try and open up negotiations to sell TV rights, and then they wonder why they can't sell them. And do you know how many, over the last several months, how many messages I've got from people in Asia that are absolutely furious that they can't even, some of these markets in Asia, huge markets, they haven't even got they can't even watch the games in Asia, and know where they can watch them. They put them on at 3 a.m. in the morning. I mean, this is just basic stuff. This is something that a kid should know.
I was one of the for the Champions League. I've been invited to for the last I think 4 or 5 match days. I've been invited to be on the biggest football spaces on Twitter. The guys hosting that, who live in the UK, didn't even know where to watch the Serie A, and they asked me where they live in the UK, and I was like, yeah, you have to go on the One Football app. One of them works in marketing. And he's like, that's insane. Had you not told me that, I wouldn't have known where to watch the Serie A. And that's not how you market a product.
No, the marketing campaign has been absolutely.
He says he works in marketing. He's like, listen, I don't understand what they're thinking, because he was like, I think the product is okay. I don't think it's that bad. But when you don't even market it, and the only reason I know is because you told me on a space.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it costs 60 quid for the whole year at One Football. I mean, that's another thing. When you don't, my mother used to say that the reason why Rembrandt paintings are so loved is not because they're just fantastic. It's also because of the framing and the environment that they're hung up in beautiful halls, in the Louvre, in the most beautiful museums. The Serie A doesn't give a shit about its product. You sell it to One Football, who don't even market it. They don't care about it. They just want content for their app.
Yeah.
So you sell it cheap. You're not going the whole way through. You're not worried about how your product is presented. The Premier League don't just sell their TV rights to anyone.
No.
They make sure that the person taking over it is on the up and up, that they market it properly. They have guarantees. Serie A don't do that.
Yeah, because that's part of looking at the bigger picture. Because if you sell it to a company that are incompetent, then that's going to damage your brand, and that means that when the next right cycles come, the prices, the value is going to go down even lower, and the interest and your base of who you're trying to sell to is smaller, and as a result, the demand goes down, and this is what it is. I mean, they've of some of the stories I've been told of some of the sales. What I think was it in one of the Asian countries anyway, where you have to go on a website to watch it, and there's like double commentary on games and stuff like this. Like they're literally just they sold it to a gaming website in one of the Asian countries. I can't remember where it was. There's some of the stories I've been told. I think it's India actually. Yeah, it was India.
Yeah,
They sold it to a gaming website in India, which has nothing to do with football. And when they sold it, they didn't even have the website ready. It took weeks before they could, and everything was going wrong. And like they had double commentary for a couple of weeks. Like people were here, there was commentating twice on games, and like this is what we're talking about. I mean, it really is like it's comedy. It's comedy. And this is TV rights we're talking about. And I mean the whole commercial side of things is laughable. I mean, the people that some of the stories I've been told, I have to be careful. I don't want to get people in trouble. But we have the commercial chiefs of Serie A that they're flying to America, to the New York office like once a month, thinking they're the big boys, thinking that they're important. They actually think they're doing a great job. I've told you about that. They've used the term "conquering America." And they're absolutely clueless, completely clueless. They think that I know we make fun of it. But they genuinely think that just because they're doing business with the Americans, that everything is great.
It's a world view. It's a world view that was modern in 1945. If you don't understand that the world has changed, whether you like it or not, the fact of the reality is that we live in a multipolar world now. Like that's just a reality. China is a huge, ginormous market. India is a huge, ginormous market. South America, Africa, Asia, these are huge markets, and you have to be there. That's where the future lies. And if you don't put your eggs, if you put all your eggs in one basket in 2025, thinking the way that you did in 1945, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, with the TV rights, Nima, I've been told by somebody that's right involved with it that the Serie A chiefs spent months and months just working on trying to secure this new TV rights deal in America.
Yeah,
they spent all their months doing on that.
Yeah.
Despite spending all that time, they got a terrible deal.
Yeah.
Despite that, and as a result of spending all that time on that, they basically did no negotiations with any other markets around the world.
So they were desperate.
Which led to basically, with a couple of days before the season, and remember, we got tons of messages from people all around the world going ballistic. We can't watch the games. There's no TV rights. Eventually, they managed to rescue a few, like last minute, but they were all kind of terrible deals. Like the one in the UK, for example, where they made no money from it, and they just sold it to any Tom, Dick, or Harry, and which provides terrible products, and the value of the deal will go down, and the product just looks a joke, and then they wonder why every single right cycle the TV deals go lower and lower. I mean, these are the people we're dealing with. They're so clueless, they're so incompetent.
And they don't care. It doesn't feel like they care, because again, one of the reasons, in order to fix something, you have to first admit that there is a problem, and there is no problem.
They don't even realise
Calcio is back.
They don't genuinely.
Calcio is back, Carlo. Don't you know that Calcio is back? I mean, that has become a meme, And the fact that they use Capello, Cannavaro, and Del Piero, who had their glory period 15 years ago, is so telling.
Longer, yeah.
Well, do you know what I mean? It's so telling that I love the three of them. They're legends of the game. Don't get it twisted. But the fact that you think Calcio is back, I mean, it's like a life imitating art. It's perfect. The fact that they use those three guys who were at the peak of their powers 15 years ago, when Italian football was kind of on the decline, but still very good. That to me suggests that you don't know, you don't even know that there is a problem. You know, the fact that domestically DAZN has for 3-4 seasons now, or 5 seasons, have had problems in Italy broadcasting the games because the app doesn't work properly. You know,
Cazzo, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's like, you know, stuff like that.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, it's stuff like that. And then, I mean, that's not, you know, you can look at the superficial stuff. Their anti-racism campaigns with the chimpanzees that had the entire world scratching their heads, wondering if they were dreaming.
Don't call me gypsy.
The hashtag don't call me gypsy. I mean,
but it does represent.
These are just superficial things,
it seems superficial, but it represents how they're just clueless and don't know how to execute anything. Even if they have a good idea, they just do
the
not
execution
know.
is dreadful, and it's always been dreadful.
I mean, and then, you know, when it comes to marketing, or, you know, everybody takes the piss. It's been for years, people take the piss about their marketing on social media. I mean, it's laughable. You know, that they literally are hiring chimpanzees to run the, you know, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. You know, these people can't even speak English, let alone write English.
And it's not just that. I mean, it's also the fact that, for example, whenever they do hire influencers and they hire people who to grow, to reach new audiences, they just bring people who've got nothing. There's no thought behind it. It's like, well, we'll hire this guy, this girl who's got millions of followers on social media. We bring them to a game. We spend lots of money on that. They hype it for 5 seconds, and then it's a flash in the pan. There's no long-term strategy.
No.
At all discernible.
That weirdo with the weirdo chef.
But at least he's Italian. I mean, at least he's, you know, at least he has Italian descent. At least he actually follows Calcio. Do you know what I mean? That's actually one of the good things they've done in their marketing, which is bad. But you know what I mean? I'm talking about when they bring these random YouTubers on who don't know anything about the game and have nothing to do with Italian football. They just have lots of followers. Yeah. And it's like, well, what long-term value does that have? How do you reach new audiences? You don't.
No, they haven't got a clue. They haven't got a clue, and that's why, you know. And we could go on and on. I mean, the stadiums. I mean,
the stadium situation.
I know the stadium is partly related to Italian culture, Italian bureaucracy, and all of this is, to a general sense. It's just the Italian way that things are done. I mean, you know, that we can't get a new stadium, and then that affects the finances as well. You know,
the stadium situation is particularly pertinent because Italy could literally lose the Euros as a result of that. Now, Italy hasn't really hosted a tournament by itself since 1990. Okay, in the Euros is 32, right? 2032, I think. No,
it is now.
Yeah,
it was going to be 28, but
we
lost that one already.
Yeah, I know, but it's 2032, right? So that means 42 years since Italy last hosted a tournament. If it is hosted,
and we're only co-hosts, Nima.
Exactly. If it's
to
joint,
hosts,
exactly. It's co-hosted with Turkey. If it is even hosted, I don't think it will be hosted. I think they're going to lose the rights to that, and it's going to be an embarrassment on an international scale.
It's only 4 stadiums we need as well. We only need 4 stadiums for that sort of it, and we still can't. We can't even get 4 stadiums. I mean. And I remember us arguing.
I was in university when Inter and Milan started talking about building a new stadium. I'm 43 now. Just to put it in perspective, I was in my first year of university when I when that
over 20 years, 25 years.
Yeah, 25 years.
It's absolutely mad.
I mean, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, honestly, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
I remember us arguing about this, and you saying, you know, for things to to change in Italy, things
have to go to hell.
Absolutely go to hell, and shit hits the fan. I'm sorry, we're way past that point. And
I don't think it is. I'll tell you
it can't get any worse than this.
Carlo, dear, It can get worse, and
If
it
you don't
will.
qualify for 2 World Cups in a row, 12 years without qualification World Cup, the thing that is most beloved to all Italians, not just football fans, is the World Cup and the magic of the World Cup and what that brings to everybody. And the embarrassment of not qualifying for 1 World Cup, to not qualify for 2 World Cups, and still it doesn't occur to you, like we said, it doesn't even occur to them what the problems are, let alone how to change them. If it's still, they still haven't had their light bulb moment after that, then I'm sorry, they're not.
Well, there's a reason for that, because this is the thing. Italy won the Euros in between that, and Italy, it will always, it's a footballing culture, it's a footballing country. The coaches are some of the best. They will always produce fantastic players. They will always produce fantastic coaches, because that's just part of the culture. And that is also a part of Italy's curse, because it helps mask a lot of the problems, and it allows the people in charge to point at that and say, look, we've done a great job. Look, we won the Euros. Look, we had for the first time ever, we had a team in the final of the Conference Europa and Champions League. What are you moaning about? Everything is fine. Don't worry about it. Forget about it. Everything is okay. The Italian okie doke, I call it. Everything is fine. There's so much shit under the rug that the rug no longer even touches the floor, but don't worry about it. Everything is fine. The Italian okie doke. And it's it's quite sad, really, because it will never, as I said, before you can fix a problem, you have to acknowledge that it exists.
And there's a lot of them, a lot of problems as well. It's not just one. It's not just the stadiums. It's not just we need to sort out the stadiums. No, it's not just that. It's so much, And I mean, like Italy, the Italy national team is connected to this. Like you said, we won that Euros in Euro 2020. Deservedly won it. We were. It was amazing. It was magical, and I'm so that was one of my greatest footballing moments to appreciate that, and it was incredible to celebrate that. But let's be honest, that is the exception, the massive exception to what the rule has been with Italian football, Italian national team in the last, since 2006. We've been for a top nation, we've been an embarrassment. 2 World Cups without qualifying. I mean, for Italy. I'm sorry and then you look at the players, the Italian players that we're producing and developing, and I'm sorry, it's one of the worst in history. If we compare to our great past we were always producing superstars, Ballon d'Or winners, the best forwards in the world, the best defenders in the world, players playing for the biggest teams in the world around Europe. We don't have those players anymore. And we're not producing
one or two at most, but you don't have superstars. You don't have, you can't, as much as I love Bastoni and Barella, and I do love them, I think they're world-class players, you want to compare them to the superstar level that someone like Totti had, Baggio had, Del Piero had, Maldini had, Nesta, Cannavaro, Pirlo. Those were bigger stars in their day than today's crop are. And I'm not saying that they're worse players. I'm saying in terms of how
and look how
dominant.
many you've named there as well.
Yeah.
And they're all in the same generation. And we're not, and we're not. We just don't give young Italian players a chance at all. Our player of the tournament in the under 19s last year was under 17s was Liberali. How many minutes has he played for Milan this season? He's playing in Serie C, and then you get other players in that same tournament like Ethan Nwaneri. Somebody tweeted me this yesterday, and they're spot on. And he's broken out as one of the the big young stars of Arsenal. That's just one example. We don't give our young players. We don't have a pathway for these young players.
The problem for me is the pathway, the lack of pathway for young talents to play first team football at a higher level.
Especially
I think
young
that's
Italians.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is the problem for me. I think that's the main thing. I think the youth.
It's all part. What I mean is, it's all part of that. You can you said,
it's not just one thing; it's many things.
It's all part of this bigger, decay. That we're not even producing.
That is true, and has always been true of the last 15, 20 years, even when Italian clubs were doing well. And I want to remind people listening that we were saying the same things then, when it was going well, consistently, week after week, and we're saying it now after this disaster in the Champions League, because they are true. They were true then, they are true now. And a few positive results over a couple of years doesn't change the fact. That's what we're saying. Again, macro perspective and micro perspective.
Yeah.
So now let's move on, I think, to the
Well, I just want to
micro.
say one last thing. That I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but unfortunately, if you understand Italian culture and everything, I don't see any of this changing. I just see
I
us.
don't know if it changes
I
or
don't think
not.
ever. But if it is to change, we need all the people in the top positions in Italian football all need to lose their jobs, all need to resign, and we need to have someone certainly at the top that has a vision and understands and recognizes that all of these things we've just listed and many more, this is only the tip of the iceberg, recognizes all the problems that there are in Italian football and systematically tries to go through them one by one to try and solve these issues. We need somebody, first of all, need someone right at the top looking down on the whole system that can basically recognize it and then start putting things into place. And if that means sacking people in certain positions, sacking your head of TV rights, sacking your commercial chief, sacking your everybody in the league, all the people that are important, that is what's needed. Gravina should resign. He's become a joke now. Again, like you said, the okie dokie, he got away with it because they won a Euros in between. This guy does nothing for Italian football. He's a puppet for UEFA, and he's also got his head up his into corruption as well. He should resign. Unfortunately, he's just been re-elected, which I think answers your question whether anything's going to change. These people only care about preserving their own power. They don't care about Italian football as a whole.
Right. Let's move on to the micro perspective of each and every one of these eliminations, because they are very different, each and every one of them.